Welcome, my family. Before we jump in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I would also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Drop your answers and any suggestions in the comments, and I might give you a shout out at the end of my next video. Thanks for being here and for all your amazing support. Working nights at Walmart always attracted a certain kind of person. You got students paying tuition, single parents needing flexible hours, retirees who couldn't stand sitting still, and people like Travis, those who didn't quite fit anywhere else. I first met him during orientation, though he didn't say much. He sat 2 rows behind me, hood up despite the buzzing fluorescent lights, head tilted down as if the floor was more interesting than the safety videos. When the trainer asked him a question about policy, Travis muttered something too low to hear. Everyone laughed awkwardly, and the trainer moved on. On my second week of night shifts, I got paired with him to unload a truck. That was when I learned who he really was. Travis was strange. Not just shy strange or awkward strange. Something deeper. His arms were littered with thin scars, some old, some fresh, running in jagged lines. His nails were bitten raw. He moved fast, almost frantic, stacking boxes with the kind of strength that looked dangerous if misdirected. And he muttered constantly, half sentences, curses, sometimes jokes that didn't make sense. Don't take the pills, take more pills. 2's not enough. Gotta feel it, right? He said once, laughing to himself as he hauled paper towel packs higher than he should have been able to. I froze, unsure how to respond. He looked at me, eyes wide and unblinking, and then barked out a laugh. Relax, man. Just kidding. But I knew he wasn't. Over the next few months, the stories about Travis piled up. He'd vanish during shift and reappear in the break room with bloodshot eyes, slamming down handfuls of over-the-counter pills like candy. He'd cut his arm in the bathroom once and told the manager it was an accident with a box cutter. Nobody believed him. He had violent streaks, too. One night, a coworker bumped into him with a cart, and Travis wheeled around, fist raised. "You want to die tonight?" he hissed. The coworker stammered out an apology and bolted. Management never fired him. They said he was protected, something about mental health accommodations, corporate policy. We all whispered about it in the aisles. Nobody wanted to work alone with him, but schedules kept pairing us anyway. I ended up on his radar without meaning to. It started the night I stuck up for him. A customer had come in drunk, harassing Travis while he stocked shelves. "Hey freak, what's wrong with your arms? You a cutter?" The man laughed, cruel and loud. I stepped in, told the customer to move along. He sneered, but he left. After that, Travis looked at me differently. "You didn't have to do that," he said, voice quieter than usual. "Yeah, well," I shrugged. He was out of line. Something in him clicked. From that night forward, he shadowed me. At first, it was small things, bringing me energy drinks, showing up in my aisle even when he wasn't scheduled there. He'd lean against the shelf, watching me work, muttering about fake people and how I wasn't like them. He said I got it, whatever it was. But soon, it tipped into obsession. He started waiting for me after shifts, loitering by my car in the empty lot at 3 a.m., just making sure you're safe, he'd say with that twitchy smile. One night, I came out to find him sitting on my hood, smoking, staring at the store doors like he'd been guarding them. When I told him he didn't have to do that, his smile faded into something sharp. "You don't appreciate it?" After everything, I learned quickly to thank him, to play along. Other coworkers noticed. "Man, Travis is glued to you," one whispered. "Be careful." But being careful only went so far. One night, I was zoning the pet food aisle when I heard a crash. I ran toward it and found Travis on the floor, shaking violently. A pile of pill bottles spilled from his jacket. His lips were pale, and foam flecked the corner of his mouth. I panicked, yelling for help, calling 911. The EMTs came and hauled him away, and I thought maybe that would be the end of it. Maybe he'd get real help, and I'd be free. He was back a week later, smiling wider than before, scars fresher. He found me on my break and leaned in close. "You saved me," he whispered. "Now we're connected." The way he said it chilled me, like it wasn't gratitude but ownership. From then on, he became protective in ways that blurred into threatening. If a customer raised their voice at me, Travis would appear, stepping too close, fist tight. If a coworker joked with me, he'd scowl, muttering about snakes. Once, when I clocked out early, he followed me home. My porch light revealed him standing across the street, arms crossed, watching. I didn't sleep that night. I reported it to management, of course. They nodded, filled out forms, promised to address it. But Travis stayed. Corporate policy, again. Hands tied. The last straw came when I was restocking electronics one night. Travis appeared, silent this time, and just stood behind me. When I turned, he was grinning, eyes wide, holding a box cutter loosely in his hand. "You know, I'd never hurt you," he said. His tone was calm, almost soothing. "But I could hurt anyone who tries to hurt you. That's loyalty, right?" My throat closed up. I nodded, forcing a shaky smile. "Yeah, loyalty." He slipped the box cutter back into his pocket and walked away, humming. I put in my 2 weeks the next day. I don't know what happened to Travis after I left. I heard rumors. He was suspended after threatening another coworker, that he disappeared for months, that someone saw him hanging around the parking lot even after he wasn't on payroll anymore. But I still think about him, about the scars, the muttering, the way his eyes locked on mine like I was the only anchor he had left. I wonder if sticking up for him doomed me, if kindness had chained me to something darker than I understood. Because sometimes, late at night, I'll step outside and swear I feel someone watching from across the street. And in the back of my mind, I hear his voice. "You saved me. Now we're connected." Working retail teaches you how to spot trouble before it arrives. You notice the subtle cues, the heavy shuffle of feet, the strange smell carried in with the cold air, the way a person holds their body as if they're fighting gravity itself. Most of the time, it's nothing, just someone exhausted, broke, or stressed. But every once in a while, you see something you can't shake. It was a Thursday night in early spring. The store was quiet, the way it usually was after 10. We'd already finished most of the zoning, pushing misplaced items back where they belonged, straightening shelves so corporate would be happy with the cameras. I was assigned to the grocery side, making lazy loops between dry goods and the freezers, pretending to look busy while the clock crawled toward midnight. That's when I saw him. He came in through the sliding doors, hunched and slow, like the weight of the world was stitched into his shoulders. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, but bent so much he looked shorter. His clothes hung loose, faded jeans, and a gray hoodie with dark stains along the hem. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It hit before he got close, sharp, sour, unmistakable. Decay. He limped heavily, dragging his left leg as if it didn't belong to him. When he turned down my aisle, I saw why. His calf looked grotesque. The skin bulged against the fabric, shiny and stretched. Where the pants had torn, the wound revealed itself, raw, angry, discolored. It wasn't just a scrape or infection. The flesh had gone black in places, curling at the edges like burned paper. Every step left a faint smear on the linoleum. I froze. He didn't look at me, didn't even acknowledge that I was there. His eyes were glassy, sunken deep, rimmed with exhaustion. He moved past me toward the pharmacy shelves, muttering under his breath. "Need something, anything." I swallowed, heart thudding. "Sir, do you need help?" His head jerked toward me like I'd startled him awake. His lips trembled before he spoke. "Pain medicine, please." I gestured weakly toward the shelves. Ibuprofen, Tylenol, here. He reached for a bottle, but his hands shook so badly he dropped it. The plastic clattered, rolling under the shelves. His knees wobbled as if that tiny effort had drained him. I stepped forward, instinct telling me to catch him if he fell. Up close, the stench was unbearable. My eyes watered. The infection was beyond anything I'd seen. Skin eaten away in ragged holes, tissue glistening wet and dark. "You need a hospital," I said, voice cracking. "No doctors." His words came out sharp, panicked. He shook his head violently. "They'll take it. Cut it off." "I can't." I stared at him, stunned. "Sir, if you don't get help." He swayed, his face twisted in pain. "Don't want to die on a table." Then he collapsed. The fall wasn't dramatic. His legs simply gave out, folding beneath him, body crumpling against the cold floor. His breath rattled, shallow and uneven, chest rising only slightly. I shouted for help. My voice echoed across the empty aisles. A coworker came running, eyes wide when she saw him sprawled there. She clapped her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, call 911. I yelled. She fumbled for her phone, backing away as though afraid the smell alone might cling to her. I crouched near him, unsure what to do. His eyes fluttered open, pupils blown wide. He looked right at me, or through me, I couldn't tell. His lips moved around words that barely came out. "No alone," the phrase cut through me. I tried to reassure him, though my voice shook. "You're not alone. We called for help. Stay with me." But his gaze drifted, unfocused. His breath hitched, a thin wheeze escaping, then steadied for a moment, ragged and shallow. The minutes stretched like hours. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, far too bright for what was happening on the floor below. Every sound in the store seemed magnified. The crackle of the intercom, the squeak of shoes as another co-worker rushed over, the distant beeping of a register. When the paramedics finally arrived, they knelt immediately, working quickly, voices clipped and professional. They checked his vitals, unwrapped bandages from their kits, spoke words I didn't understand, necrotic tissue, septic shock. One shook his head grimly. They loaded him onto a stretcher, strapping him down gently. His head lolled to one side. His eyes had closed, and for a moment I thought he was gone already. Then his chest rose weakly again. I stood frozen as they wheeled him out, the smell lingering even after he was gone. The sliding doors whooshed open, letting in the night air, and then the store was quiet again, as if nothing had happened. But something had. Later, we learned he never made it to the hospital. The ambulance crew said he flatlined en route. They tried to revive him, but it was too late. His body had been shutting down long before he walked through our doors. The police came to ask questions, though there wasn't much to tell. No ID in his pockets, no wallet, no phone. He was just another drifter, nameless, faceless, consumed by infection until he staggered into the bright aisles of Walmart looking for pain relief he'd never get. The next morning, when I returned from my shift, the spot where he'd fallen had been scrubbed clean. The linoleum gleamed too bright, a chemical shine that erased the evidence but not the memory. I walked past slowly, heart heavy, imagining him still lying there, whispering, "No alone." Co-workers avoided the subject. Management said only "unfortunate situation" before reminding us to file incident reports. Customers shopped like normal, carts clattering, children whining for toys. The world moved on, but I couldn't. I kept replaying it. His eyes, the smell, the way his body folded in on itself like he'd been carrying the weight of dying for too long. I wondered what his life had been before that night. Did he have family? A daughter, a son, someone waiting for him who'd never know where he ended up? Or had he been truly alone, wandering from place to place until his body failed him under the fluorescent lights of a superstore. Weeks later, I still saw him in my mind. Sometimes while zoning shelves, I'd glance down the aisle half expecting to see him limping toward me again, clutching at his leg, whispering for help he wouldn't accept. It left me with an ache I couldn't name. Because the truth is, he didn't just die from an infection. He died from being invisible, slipping through the cracks until the only witnesses to his last moments were strangers in blue vests, frozen in horror. Whenever I smell something sharp and sour now, old garbage, spoiled meat, it drags me back to that night, to the linoleum, the bright lights, the rattling breath, the whisper, "No alone." And every time I walk into that aisle, I remember, not because the floor is clean, but because some things never wash away. Elena started at Walmart just before Thanksgiving rush, the worst possible time to learn the ropes. She was 21, soft-spoken, but quick with a smile, the kind of coworker customers always asked for when they couldn't find something. She worked nights mostly stocking shelves, helping at registers when a line got too long. I liked her immediately. She was the sort of person who made long shifts bearable, humming along to the overhead music, joking about the endless stacks of holiday candy. That's also when Curtis started showing up. Curtis was a regular, mid-40s, with greasy hair that clung to his forehead and a thick pair of glasses that never quite sat right. He always wore the same fraying camo jacket, even when it was warm out, and his jeans hung off his frame like he'd borrowed them from someone bigger. At first, no one thought much of him, just another regular customer wandering around at odd hours. But after Elena arrived, his habits changed. He started showing up almost every night. He didn't shop so much as loiter, drifting from aisle to aisle, always finding a reason to end up near her. I noticed it first when we were stocking paper towels. Elena bent to pull a pack from pallet, and Curtis appeared at the end of the aisle, staring. Not browsing, not comparing prices, just watching. When she turned, startled, he smiled like they were sharing a secret. She gave a polite nod and went back to work, but I saw the way her shoulders tensed. It escalated quickly. Curtis began making comments whenever she walked by. "That's a pretty smile, Elena. Your hair looks nice tonight, Elena." He used her name like he owned it. Sometimes he'd ask personal questions. "You live around here? You got a boyfriend?" And when she brushed him off, his smile never faltered, but his eyes darkened behind those crooked glasses. We told management, of course. Elena went straight to our shift lead one night after Curtis lingered by the registers for over an hour, pretending to shop. The lead sighed and shrugged. "He's a paying customer. Unless he does something illegal, we can't ask him to leave." That was the refrain. Over and over, "He's a customer." Curtis got bolder. One night Elena was collecting carts in the parking lot, and I saw him leaning against his car, waiting. He waved her over. She shook her head and pushed the carts faster, but he followed in slow steps, calling out, "Don't be shy, sweetheart." She darted back inside, breathless, and management once again told her they'd keep an eye on it. Nothing changed. The breaking point came on a Sunday night. I was taking trash out back when I heard scuffling near the loading dock. A voice, hers, sharp with panic. "Get off me." I dropped the trash bag and ran toward the alley. That's when I saw him. Curtis had cornered Elena against the brick wall, one hand gripping her arm, the other tugging at her jacket. He was muttering something, too low to hear, his face twisted in a grin that made my stomach lurch. Elena fought hard. She jammed the lit end of her cigarette into his cheek, and a hiss of burning skin cut through the night. He yelped, stumbling back, and she kicked him square between the legs. Curtis dropped like a sack of rocks, cursing. I grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her inside, slamming the door behind us. She was shaking so hard she couldn't speak at first, eyes wild, breath ragged. When words finally came, They tumbled out in gasps. "He followed me out here. He tried to grab me. We called the police. They showed up 20 minutes later, long after Curtis had limped off into the night. They took statements, nodded sympathetically, promised to look into it. But without witnesses beyond us, without security cameras covering that corner of the lot, they said it would be hard to press charges. Management was furious, but not at Curtis. At us. For escalating. For calling the police without approval. That was the last straw for Elena. She didn't quit right then. She finished her shift, pale and silent, folding sweaters with hands that trembled. But the next morning, she called and told them she was done. By the end of the week, she'd packed up her apartment and left town to stay with a cousin 2 states over. I never saw her again. Curtis still came around for a while, wandering the aisles, pretending to shop. But without Elena there, he seemed smaller, less certain. Eventually, he stopped showing up altogether. Maybe he found someone else. Maybe he learned to hide better. What haunted me isn't just what he did. It's how little anyone cared. Elena begged for help, and management shrugged because he's a paying customer. The police filed a report and left. She had to save herself with fire and fury, and even then she wasn't safe. Not from him, not from the indifference that let him keep walking through those doors night after night. Every time I walk past that back alley now, I remember the sound of her cigarette hissing against the skin, the way her boot connected with a crack, the way she ran with me inside like the building was the only safe place left. I think about how easy it is for people like Curtis to slip through, shielded by excuses and apathy. And I think about Elena, young, kind, too good for a place that let her down. She didn't just quit a job. She ran for her life. And somewhere out there, Curtis is still walking, still watching, still waiting for another aisle, another smile, another name to learn and twist into something ugly. I've been working at Walmart for about 6 months, long enough to know which all stayed messy no matter how many times you straighten them, and long enough to stop being shocked by how people treated retail workers. Still, there are nights that stick in your head forever. Nights when you realize just how ugly people can get under the fluorescent lights. It was late August, back to school season, which meant the store looked like a war zone by the time evening rolled around. Parents and kids swarmed the aisles, scavenging for supplies on lists that seemed to grow longer every year. Spiral notebooks stacked like bricks, pens spilling across shelves, and the biggest battlefield of all, binders, folders, and the infamous trapper keepers. I was zoning the stationery aisle, folding cardboard displays back into shape when I heard it. A boy's voice, shrill, angry, cutting through the hum of the store. "Mom," I said, "I want it." I looked up and saw him. 8 years old, wiry, with a scowl that looked too old for his face. His mother stood next to him, pregnant, belly straining under a striped shirt, clutching a shopping list in one hand and rubbing her temple with the other. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion you don't shake off with a nap. The father stood behind them, arms crossed, wearing that glassy stare of a man who'd given up long ago. The boy had 2 trapper keepers clutched in his arms, bright neon, ones plastered with designs. His mother gently tried to take one from him. "Sweetheart, we can't get both. Pick one, okay?" That's when he snapped. He shrieked, a sound so sharp that heads turned from halfway down the aisle. He threw himself onto the floor, kicking and thrashing, the binders clattering against the tiles. I froze, gripping the edge of the shelf, watching as this child transformed into something feral. His mother crouched down, whispering to him, trying to calm him, but he screamed louder, fists slamming the floor. "I want both. You're mean. You're stupid." I expected the father to step in, to kneel beside his wife and help. Instead, he just stood there, face blank, eyes wandering to a display of mechanical pencils like this wasn't his problem. Other shoppers slowed, pretending to browse while sneaking looks. The aisle had that awkward hush, the one that comes when everyone's waiting to see how bad things will get. The mother tried to pull him up, tugging at his arm gently. That's when the boy twisted, lifted his small foot, and kicked her. Hard. I heard the thud before I processed what I was seeing. He had kicked her square in the stomach. She gasped, clutching her belly, stumbling back against the shelf of binders. For a second, everything froze. The boy panting, the mother hunched, the father still motionless. My own stomach lurched. "Ma'am," I started, taking a step forward. But before I could do anything, the father finally moved. Not to help his wife, not to scold his son. He bent down, plucked the trapper keepers off the floor, and handed them back to the boy. "Here," he muttered, "take them both." The boy stopped crying instantly. It was like flipping a switch. He grinned, clutching the binders to his chest, and strutted down the aisle without another word, satisfied. His mother stayed bent over, one hand pressed to her stomach, breathing in shallow gasps. She whispered something, maybe the baby's name, maybe a prayer. I hovered there, torn between calling for a manager and rushing to her side. In the end, I didn't move fast enough. The father slipped an arm under her elbow and guided her out of the aisle. Not toward the registers, not toward the front doors, straight toward the bathrooms. His expression never changed. The boy followed, skipping. I stood in the silence they left behind, staring at the binders still scattered on the floor. My hands shook as I picked them up and set them back on the shelf. A couple of other shoppers whispered, then pushed their carts away quickly, eager to escape the discomfort. Minutes later, I saw an ambulance through the front windows, its red lights washing across the linoleum. 2 EMTs hurried inside with a stretcher. I didn't see the family again. When I asked my manager later, he shrugged. "Domestic situation," he said, as if that explained it. "Not our business." What was our business? It was burned into my mind. The way the boy's face twisted with rage, the dull indifference in the father's eyes, the mother clutching her stomach after a blow from her own child. I went back to zoning shelves, but the sound of that kick replayed in my head over and over. A hollow thud, the sound of something fragile being struck. Working retail, you see things you wish you could unsee. Thieves, addicts nodding off in the aisles, parents screaming at toddlers. But this was worse. Not because it was the loudest, not because it drew the biggest crowd, but because it was a glimpse into a family that carried its horror everywhere they went, even into the bright, ordinary aisles of a Walmart. That night, when I finally clocked out and drove home, the store's lights fading in my rearview mirror, I couldn't stop thinking about that pregnant woman. I wondered if she was okay, if the baby was okay, if she would forgive the boy, if she would forgive the man who let it happen. And most of all, I wonder what that boy would grow into now that he'd learned a lesson. That violence got him exactly what he wanted. I still think about it sometimes when I walk past the school supplies aisle. The rows of folders and binders look harmless, just plastic and cardboard and bright patterns for kids heading back to class. But behind that display, I still see a mother doubled over in pain, a father refusing to act, and a child grinning with both arms full of trapper keepers. That aisle has never felt the same since. It was one of those ordinary errands that should have been over in 15 minutes. I'd stopped by Walmart after work, tired, with just enough energy to grab fishing bait for the weekend and maybe a soda for the ride home. The sun had already set, the lot lit in that harsh orange glow that makes everything feel a little more empty than it should. Inside, the store was calm. A few families wandered the aisles, kids trailing behind carts, but most of the crowd had already cleared out. I moved quickly, straight to sporting goods, then toward checkout. That's when I noticed them. 2 men. At first, nothing about them screamed danger. They looked like any other customers, mid-30s, ball caps low, hands shoved in pockets. But I felt it, the way their eyes stuck to me, following as I turned down an aisle. One walked a few steps behind me. The other hung off to the side, pretending to look at shelves, but always keeping me in his line of sight. I tested it. I doubled back, looped through housewares, cut into groceries. They followed every time. My stomach tightened. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was paranoid, that maybe we were just moving the same direction. But when I stopped to tie my shoe in front of the frozen section, both of them stopped too. One leaned on his cart, watching in the reflection of the freezer door. The other pretended to check his phone, but his eyes never left me. That was no coincidence. I sped up, heart pounding now, and made for the checkout lanes. One of them peeled away, but the other lined up 2 registers over, nothing in his hands. Just standing, waiting. I paid quickly, clutching the bag so tightly the plastic stretched white. Out in the parking lot, the cold air hit my face like a warning. The lot was quieter than it should have been. Just a couple of cars scattered, the rest swallowed by shadows. I quickened my pace, but I heard footsteps behind me. Too close, too steady. I didn't look back. I just kept moving toward my truck, keys in hand. But as I reached the door, I saw him in the reflection of the window. One of the men, standing 10 feet back, staring. I shoved the bag inside and climbed into the driver's seat, locking the doors immediately. My hands trembled on the wheel. I started the engine, headlights flaring to life, and that's when I saw the second man step out from between 2 parked cars. He grinned. I pulled out fast, tires crunching over gravel at the edge of the lot. My heart hammered as I merged onto the road, checking my mirrors again and again. For a mile, it seemed clear. But then, in the glow of the rear view, headlights appeared close, too close. A dark sedan tailing me. I tried slowing down. The car slowed too. I sped up. So did they. Panic sharpened everything. I knew I couldn't go home, not with them behind me. So I made a sudden turn toward the bait shop near the edge of town, the one with a gravel lot and neon sign buzzing weakly. I pulled in hard, gravel spraying under the tires. The sedan followed, rolling in behind me. I jumped out before I could think, bolting for the shop door. My boots slipped on the gravel, but adrenaline kept me upright. Inside, the warm smell of old wood and fish guts filled the air. 2 older men stood by the counter, talking quietly. Their heads snapped up when I burst in. "They're following me," I gasped, pointing toward the lot. The men moved without hesitation. One grabbed a heavy flashlight from the counter. The other lifted a rusted baseball bat propped by the door. They stepped out into the cold night as the sedan idled, its headlights glaring. The driver must have realized what he was up against. With 3 men staring him down now, me shaking but still present, and those 2 locals armed and ready, the sedan lingered for just a second longer. Then the engine roared, tires spinning, and it tore off back into the dark. The bait shop owner turned back to me, bat still in his grip. "You know them." I shook my head, still gasping. "They follow me from Walmart. I think they wanted to jump me." He frowned, eyes narrowing. "Would have too, if you hadn't come here." The other man handed me a glass of water and clapped my shoulder. "Smart thinking, son. You don't run home when you're chased. You run somewhere with people." I sat there for a long while, shaking, trying to calm down. Eventually, I called a friend to drive me home, leaving my truck parked at the shop overnight. I didn't want to risk being on the road alone again. I never saw those men after that night. Maybe they were drifters, maybe locals, maybe just predators waiting for someone vulnerable. But the memory of their eyes on me, the way they followed every turn, the way they grinned when they thought I was alone, that never left. Now, whenever I go shopping after dark, I keep my head on a swivel. I scan reflections, listen for footsteps, keep keys clenched tight in my hand. Because that night taught me something simple and terrifying. A routine trip to Walmart can turn into a hunt and you don't always know you're the prey until it's almost too late. I've been driving supply routes for Walmart for a few years. Nothing glamorous, just long hours on the road hauling pallets from distribution centers to stores. Winter was always the hardest. The highways iced over, visibility shrank to nothing, and you had to white-knuckle the wheel, praying the rig wouldn't fishtail. But that night was worse than usual. It was February, a storm sweeping across the Midwest, and the snow fell so thick it erased the horizon. My headlights cut only a few feet ahead, the rest swallowed by swirling white. The radio fizzled with static, and even the CB chatter had died down. Most smart drivers had pulled over hours ago. I should have too, but I was stubborn, behind schedule, and figured if I kept crawling forward, I'd make it to the next town before things got too bad. That's when I saw her, a figure on the shoulder, waving. At first, I thought my eyes were tricking me. The snow distorted everything, made shadows dance where there weren't any. But as I rolled closer, I saw her clearly, a young woman, bundled in a thin coat, her dark hair matted with snow. She hugged her arms to her chest, shivering, one hand shooting out again in a desperate wave. I slowed, heart hammering. No one should have been out there. Not in weather like that. I pulled the rig onto the shoulder, hazards blinking red against the curtain of white, and cracked the passenger door. She climbed in quickly, breath clouding the cab. "Thank you," she whispered, voice hoarse with cold. "No problem," I said, trying to keep my tone casual, though unease coiled in my chest. "Where you headed?" "Home," she said softly. "My daughter's waiting. I need to get home." Her clothes were strange, like they belonged to another decade. A long skirt under the coat, boots scuffed and old-fashioned. Her hands were raw, the skin cracked from cold. She looked young, maybe 25, but her eyes were older, hollow in a way that made me shiver. "You shouldn't be out here," I said. "Storm like this'll kill you." She nodded, staring straight ahead at the windshield. It almost did once. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just drove. The cab filled with the rhythm of wipers, the steady hum of tires on ice, and the howl of wind outside. She barely moved, except to occasionally glance at me with those haunted eyes. "She's waiting for me," she whispered once. I promised I'd come back. I nodded, not pressing. People pick up all sorts of things on the road. Guilt, grief, memories too heavy to carry alone. Maybe she was one of them. After 20 minutes, she pointed. "Turn left up ahead. The blue house." I squinted through the snow. Sure enough, a faint mailbox jutted from the drifts, and a long driveway curved into darkness. I eased the truck as far as I could, tires slipping, and saw it. A pale blue house at the end, shutters rattling in the wind. "This it?" I asked. She smiled for the first time, a thin, brittle smile. "Yes, thank you." She climbed down from the cab, boots crunching in the snow. I leaned over to call after her, "Stay warm, take care," but the storm swallowed my words. She was already trudging toward the porch, her figure fading into the white. I pulled back onto the highway, unsettled but relieved. I told myself I'd done a good deed, maybe saved a life. But the longer I drove, the colder the cab felt. The next morning, after dropping the load, I mentioned it at the diner where drivers gathered for coffee. An old man at the counter perked up when I said Blue House. "That place?" he asked. "It's been empty for years." My stomach dropped. "No, I dropped someone off there last night." A woman said her daughter was waiting. The man shook his head slowly. "You're not the first to say that." He told me the story in a hushed voice, the way people talk about things they half believe but fear too much to laugh at. Decades ago, during a blizzard like the one I'd driven through, a woman named Lena had tried to make it home to her little girl. She'd left work late, got caught in the storm, and never made it back. They found her body 2 miles from her house, frozen just short of the porch. Her daughter had grown up without her. Since then, drivers on that stretch of highway sometimes reported seeing her, always during snowstorms, always looking for a ride home, always asking for her daughter. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. I remembered the weight of her sitting beside me, the frost on her eyelashes, the way her voice cracked when she said, "I promised I'd come back." Some drivers said picking her up was a blessing, that it meant you'd make it through the storm safely, like she was watching over you. Others said it was a curse, that she was forever trapped in that endless walk, dragging strangers into her grief. All I know is that when I passed that stretch of highway again, weeks later, I couldn't help but glance at the shoulder, half expecting to see her there. And when the snow started falling, my grip tightened on the wheel, listening for the sound of a knock on the cab door. Because sometimes, late at night when the weather turns and the road goes quiet, I swear I can still smell her, snow and sorrow and something older than the storm itself. Lena, still trying to get home. Kendra worked apparel. Tidy stacks of jeans, endless hangers, a tape measure looped around her neck like a lanyard. She was quick with customers and quicker with us. The kind of co-worker who could smooth a day down just by smiling across the racks. We joked about everything. Mangled returns, runaway carts, the song that played every hour on the hour. And we didn't talk about the things that made her eyes go far away. We all have them. Hers had a name, Eli. I knew the name before I knew the story. He'd call sometimes, and she'd step into the back to answer, face turned to the cinder block wall, voice low. When she came back out, she'd work faster like speed could keep thoughts from catching up. On good days, his name was a cloud that passed. On bad days, it sat over the registers all shift. That evening, the store felt ordinary in the way that fools you. Air conditioning too cold over sunburned customers. Kids dragging their feet past school supplies. Self-checkout beeping polite warnings into nobody's ears. I was assigned to zone near apparel, straightening stacks, rehanging shirts that had slipped off. Kendra was refolding a table of hoodies, red nails pinching the fabric into neat rectangles. We were talking about nothing. That was the point. The automatic doors sighed and let the night in, and the whole place changed shape. He wasn't big. He didn't need to be. He carried a posture like a weapon. Shoulders set, jaw locked, that tense forward lean of a man who has already decided what happens next. He wore a windbreaker over a plain shirt and walked like he knew the aisles by heart. When his eyes found Kendra, I watched her spine go rigid without her hand stopping. She saw him the way an animal sees a shadow before the hawk. He didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. That almost made it worse. "Kendra," he said when he reached the end of the aisle. The syllables came out flat. "We're going to talk." She didn't look up. "I'm working, Eli. Now." She lifted her head then, and the smile she put on had too many teeth. "You can't be here." That's when he showed her. Not to me, not to the cameras, just to her. He pinched his jacket aside with 2 fingers and let the grip flash at his waistband. A shape, a color, a piece of the world rearranged. He didn't lift it. He didn't have to. I saw her pupils blow wide. I watched the air leave her like someone had opened a valve. I stepped backward into hoodies that had just been folded. I heard nothing but the slow electric hum of the lights and my own heart being loud in the wrong place. My hands remembered the radio on my hip before my brain did. I squeezed the talk button and said the simplest thing I could get out, "Manager to apparel." "Now." Eli's eyes cut to me and back to her. "We're going somewhere private," he said. "We're not doing this here." "No," she said, a reflex, not a plan. "Yes," he said, and laid a hand on her elbow, not roughly. That made it worse too. The bathroom was down the main aisle, past jewelry and seasonal. He walked with her like they were any couple on any night. No one looked twice. That's the hell of it. The worst moments can slide right past 100 strangers under bright lights. I trailed them at a distance that felt both too close and not enough, whispering into the radio what I was seeing, my words coming out in short, chopped pieces. Someone on the other end was already calling 911. Someone was securing doors. Someone was telling customers there was a maintenance issue near the back. None of it touched the two people moving toward the sign that said restrooms. At the door, Eli stopped and turned his face just enough for me to hear. "Don't," he said. He wasn't looking at me, not exactly. He was looking at the space around me, where the idea of anyone else might be. He held the door for Kendra like a gentleman and followed her in. I stood there a second, stupid and breathing wrong, then pushed into the family restroom next door and pressed my ear to the wall that separated them. Fluorescence buzzed. Air vents sighed. From the women's room, muffled words bled through ceramic and paint. "Neil," he said, "we're going to pray." "Eli, please," she said, and the word please was shaped like his name. And where I can see them. The stall doors in our bathroom threw back my own face in pieces, my reflection cut into strips. I tasted copper. I backed out, ran to meet my manager halfway down the aisle. She had her phone to her ear and her mouth set. "Police are on the way," she said. "We're clearing this side of the store. Don't go in there." "Eli has a gun," I said. "I heard," she said. "Don't go in." We stood outside the bathroom door like children outside a confessional, the red-lit exit sign above us doing nothing useful. Customers drifted away, herded by associates with smiles that didn't reach eyes. The store kept breathing like a thing too big to stop. Then the lock clicked. If you've never heard a bathroom lock in a quiet aisle while you're waiting for police, you don't know how loud such a small sound can be. "Kendra," I called because I had to say something. "It's me." "Go away," Eli said through the door, conversational. "We're fine. Everything after happened in the wrong order." Officers came, slow and careful. They took positions that made triangles of the hallway. They spoke into radios that hissed and clicked like insects. One of them tried talking through the door, a voice pitched the way you talk to someone on a ledge. Not talking down, just talking steady. "Eli, I'm Officer Martin. I'm here to help. Can you tell me what's going on?" "Private," Eli said. "This is private. Let Kendra come out," the officer said. "We can all step outside and—" "No," Eli said. "We're resolving this." In the quiet that followed, I heard the soft scuff of someone's knee on tile. I heard Kendra say, "I'm not leaving you." And I wanted to bang my head against the cinder block because I knew that sentence had been written in her for years. The longer you wait in a hallway like that, the more you imagine the angles of a wrist, the distance between a hand and a grip, whether a stall door is strong enough to matter. The officers did their work, a negotiator on a phone, a key retrieved from somewhere that might or might not open the lock, a quiet plan B whispered at a volume that made me strain and hate myself for trying to hear. "Eli," Officer Martin said after another long minute, "no one needs to get hurt today." The laugh that came through the door then was small and wrong. "Nobody gets what they want," Eli said, his voice far away inside itself. "Not anymore. What I remember next is not a sound. It's the absence right before it. The inhale the building took, the way the air thinned, the way the fluorescent hum grew loud and then meaningless. Then the shot, a single concussion that made the metal of the door shiver in its frame and sent a flock of invisible birds up through my chest. There wasn't a second shot. I waited for one anyway. That's what every part of me had been braced for, chaos. Screaming, a door flying open onto more. Silence stretched. It didn't break. Officers moved, fast now, practiced, voices up close and sharp. Go, go. The special key didn't work. The ram did. The door jumped and then gave, and the bathroom swallowed uniforms and commands. I didn't see the inside right away. The manager's hand found my sleeve and pulled. "Step back," she said, and I did because my legs did what hands told them. the hallway filled with more people than I thought could fit in it. Someone pushed a yellow cart aside, like a prop from a different scene. Then I heard Kendra. Not words. A sound like a person dragging themselves back through a body. High, then low, then high again, and every note said I'm still here and I can't believe I am. When they brought her out, she was walking but not with her own steps, flanked by 2 officers, a blanket around her shoulders that made no sense in a building already too cold. Powder stung the back of my throat, and something metallic sat on my tongue. The air itself changed. Her hair was a mess, and her lipstick was gone, and her eyes were not looking at anything we could see. Kendra, I said, because I had to put the world on a hook or I was going to slide off it. She turned her head an inch. He held me down, she said. He said if he pressed me to the floor, then no one could interfere with this. She stopped, swallowed. He said I had to watch. My stomach lurched, a slow roll like a ship in bad water. I put my hand out and didn't touch her. She looked at it like it was a tool she didn't know the use of, then looked away again. They sat her at a table near customer service, because that was what there was, and wrapped another blanket around her shoulders because someone's training tells you to do that. An EMT took her blood pressure. Someone brought water and didn't make her drink it. I sat in the next chair and stared at the scuff tile and tried not to cry at the cashier station because the register kept beeping cheerfully as if the store were not a place where a life had just ended 3 aisles over. A detective asked me what I'd seen. I told him. He wrote it down with a pen that clicked. The clicks sounded like the lock all over again. He asked me to say the words "showed a gun" and "forced in bathroom." He asked me to spell Eli. I did. He thanked me like a person, not a badge. In the days after, the store did what stores do. Opened on time, cleaned the grout, replaced the door, sent an email about resources with a link to a hotline that didn't answer the first time I called. Our manager stood in morning meetings with a brave face and said support and community and we take safety seriously. And every time she said safety, I thought of the way Kendra had looked at the water and not drunk it. Kendra didn't come back. No one needed to say why. I kept expecting to see her at the hoodies, measuring tape around her neck, making rectangles out of fabric. Instead, I saw her in the corner of my eyes everywhere, in every reflection, on the curve of every security mirror, the shape of a person who had learned that the worst thing could fit inside a room with a lock you'd always thought was for privacy and not for fate. A week later, I texted her. I can take you to the DMV if you need to change anything. I can bring food. I can just sit. Hours passed. When my phone finally buzzed, the message was 3 words. I'm leaving town. I wrote back good, then deleted it and typed where? Then deleted that and wrote the only true sentence. I'm here. She didn't answer. A day later, her apartment was empty. Someone else would fold the next set of hoodies. Someone else would learn the best way to peel the size stickers off without tearing the cotton. I walked past the bathroom and didn't look in. Eventually, I left too. Not because of one thing, because of all of it. Because the overhead lights turned into a threat I couldn't explain. Because the air by the restrooms made my throat close. Because every time a door clicked, I flinched. I told myself I was moving for better hours, for more pay, for a new start. I knew what I was really doing, leaving a building that had kept a sound in its walls and wouldn't give it back. People like to say, it didn't happen to you. Like that's comfort. It happened to Kendra, not to me. That's true. And also, some sounds pick you up and put you down somewhere else, and you're never exactly where you were again. Sometimes when I'm in any public bathroom and the lock turns under my hand, I feel the air go thin for a second, and I have to stand there and breathe until it remembers how to be air. Sometimes in a store that isn't that store, I watch a couple walking toward me and feel my ribs tighten until they pass. Sometimes I think about Kendra somewhere else, under a different set of lights, maybe sleeping through the night, maybe not, and I send a hope out like a paper boat that it finds her. Eli is a sentence with a period now. Kendra is a paragraph that keeps going. I'm a line break between them, standing in a hallway under a humming light, listening to a lock click and learning what that means.